A blessed good morning, honorable members, and those under the sound of my voice. In our Moments of Impact devotional segment, today's message is a special Independence edition entitled, "There Remaineth Much More Land to be Possessed." These riveting yet challenging words recorded in Joshua chapter 13, verse 1, was given to Joshua, who was Moses' successor and tasked with taking God's people to the promised land. Joshua, up to this point in his life and leadership, was very successful at conquering some of the lands given to him by God. However, at the time of this writing, Joshua was now getting up in age, and much of the land of Canaan, which God had promised to Abraham, yet remained unconquered by Joshua and unpossessed by the children of Israel. So the Lord sent this word to him to remind him of the unfinished work he had left to do. As a nation, we recently celebrated 52 years of independence. Indeed, God has been good to us. While much has been accomplished over the past 52 years, too numerous for me to mention, there still remaineth much more land to be possessed. There is a lot of unfinished work we have left to do, so we must not sit on our laurels and pat ourselves on the back as if we have arrived or attained the prize. There remaineth much more land to be possessed in the area of immigration. We must continue to spare no efforts and expense in securing the Bahamas for Bahamians and not for foreigners. No foreigner, no matter how wealthy they are or what they bring to the table, under no circumstances should have more privileges in the Bahamas over a Bahamian. The Bahamas ought to be for Bahamians. There remaineth much more land to be possessed in making the wealth more common for the average Bahamian in this nation. Land, which is real estate, is too expensive and out of reach for many Bahamians to purchase. Additionally, far too many Bahamians are struggling and can't make ends meet. I'm on the ground. I hear the cries almost every day of the marginalized and disenfranchised. And sadly, successive governments have made it their priority to only feed themselves and the people who support them. This practice is very disheartening and depressing. Every Bahamian deserves to eat despite their political preference. There remaineth much more land to be possessed in health care. And while I applaud the government's intentional efforts in this area to bring relief to our citizens, there are still too many Bahamians suffering from physical ailments in this country because of our health care deficiencies and woes. Sadly, in some cases, if you don't have private health care, which is too costly for the average Bahamian, you will more than likely end up dying if you have a chronic illness. The system needs an overhaul. The system needs a reset. There remaineth much more land to be possessed in the area of crime. We must get crime under control. One murder is too much. We must put the fear of God in these criminals who seek to wreak havoc upon our streets. As the old adage says, if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 11 says, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily. Therefore, the hearts of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. So we must not shrink back on carrying out the laws of the books that deal with these criminals, and we must not allow those who don't feel our pain to dictate our decisions. If we don't protect our own citizens, then no one will. Finally, there remaineth much more land to be possessed in the area of education. I firmly believe that education is the key to the nation's success. And we must continue to strengthen our educational system and bring our national average up. Yes, we've been making great progress, but there is still much more work to be done. In conclusion, I charge every right-thinking Bahamian and citizen of this great nation to let's rise together in love, in faith, and in unity. Let's stop fighting amongst ourselves. Let's stop backbiting. Let's stop sowing seeds of discord. Let's stop perpetrating the black crab syndrome. Finally, let me take this opportunity to encourage all political parties to be more concerned about securing the next generation than you are about securing the next election. The future of the Bahamas lies in your hands. Let's do right for the Bahamian people. We are 52 years old now. Let's move forward. Let's move onward. Let's move upward. Let's move together, because there remaineth much more land to be possessed. Selah, think and act on these things. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I present our nation to you, for indeed there is so much more land to be possessed. There are lots of unfinished work left to do in our great nation. Bring us together as a people united in love and service for the common goal of advancing this great nation. Rid us of division and bigotry and strife and discord and greed and selfishness. Make us one and cause us to love our brothers and sisters without prejudice. Give us the courage and the resilience to overcome every obstacle we are facing. O Lord, have mercy on us and enable us to carry out your plans in the earth. Now, Father, bless and strengthen our political leaders as they carry out their duties. Almighty God, grant them the wisdom needed to navigate us through these uncertain times. Heavenly Father, bless the proceedings of this honorable house today, and let your perfect will be done. These things we ask in Jesus' name, and all of God's people say, amen. Let us pray the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Honorable members, at the suspension, we ended at first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Golden Gates.
Yes, Madam Speaker. When we last were in this place, we ended the first reading of bills. I'd like to ask you, as well as our member for Central Grand Bahama and the member for St. Anne's, to allow us to revert back to laying of documents on the agenda, if they so minded.
Thank you, honorable member. St. Anne's?
From His Majesty's loyal opposition.
Thank you, honorable member. Central? Thank you, honorable members. We will now revert back to laying of documents by ministers on the order of business. Laying of documents by ministers? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Caledon, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the automatic exchange of financial account information amendment regulation 2025.
Thank you, honorable members. Is there a seconder? Thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. Thank you. Order the document do lie on the table. For the laying of documents, the chair
Madam
recognizes the honorable member for Golden Gates.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the miscellaneous written law ratification number 3, order 2025.
Thank you, honorable members. Yes, thank you, honorable members. Order that the document be brought up. Thank you. Order the document do lie on the table. For the laying of documents.
For the laying of documents, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Statement and communications by ministers.
Communications, Madam Speaker.
Communications by the clerk. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Motion for leave of absence, leave to resign seat in New Roads. Presentations of petitions. Presentations of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. Okay. No, she told me. She told me. No, first reading. Okay. Second reading committal of bills. Okay. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I beg leave to have read for the second time and committed 2 bills that we would wish to debate simultaneously. The principal bill being the Registered Land Bill 2024, and the second, Land Adjudication Bill 2024. Madam Speaker, the opening commentary and admonition by our chaplain was rooted in land. And we all agree that there's much land to be possessed. Unfortunately, in the present system of our land law, mere possession of land doesn't necessarily translate to the marketability of that land, which has been a challenge for decades in the system that we have. The truth of the matter is that our system and the land law on which we operate, when I practice law, we call it the pre-1925 regime, because it was in 1925 when our imperial masters did a very massive transformation of their land law in 1925, and since then they have been amending that law because it was recognized by them that land ownership has long served as the cornerstone of wealth creation and economic stability across nations. Throughout history, those who control land have wielded significant economic power, as property generates both immediate income through rents and long-term wealth through appreciation of that land. In our modern economy, real estate continues to represent the largest component of household wealth for most families. I ask you, what is a family who owns land? That is what I say is the largest component that makes up their wealth. If they do an asset and liability statement, they list their land, and you'll find that land or their home is the largest component of their wealth. So property ownership provides essential benefits, for collateral for business loans, generational wealth transfer, and protection against inflation. Communities with higher rates of home ownership demonstrate greater economic resilience and social cohesion. When we talk about land ownership here in the Bahamas, as the law presently obtained, there are a lot of persons in possession of land today, but that possession doesn't truly translate into the marketability of that land. What do I mean by that? That person in possession, if you go to the bank to borrow some funds to build a home on that land, for example, the title is such that that possessory alone will not be sufficient. And, the state of law, our land law, is such that, in fact, it has been held by the highest court in the realm, if I could use that word, states that,
The king would be proud of it.
the king, that there's no such thing as absolute ownership in this country.
The king owns it all.
Right? It's all predicated upon where there's competing interests in land, who has what we call the better title. Now, the better title could be through possession, or it could be through the documents one can produce. Right? All that is very, very unsatisfactory. Very unsatisfactory. And there's been much talk over the many, many years of correcting this sad state of affairs, because I opine that part of the stagnation of our growth as a country, part of our stagnation as part of our economic growth, is because of this very challenge that we have when it comes to what I call land ownership. And so, as I said, for many, many years, we have been mooting this issue of land ownership. In fact, from, I think, there's a paper, 1968, yes, from the speech from the throne, speech from the throne in 1968. The then incoming majority rule government spoke about the state of land ownership and the land law, and it promised that we would move to more certainty and ensuring that land ownership moves beyond the pale of where the title could be questionable. And particularly because that was informed because of that act called, what the act was called again? Quieting of Titles Act. The Quieting of Titles Act. That was passed sometime in 1959. Now, you know who was in charge in that time. Right? You know who was in charge at that time, 1959. All right? And in fact, let me just say that my family and I, we were robbed by reason of that very act in Cat Island, where they used that act called the Quieting of Title Act to take almost, they quieted Old Bight Bay, Old Bight Settlement, sorry. Huh? Well, no, our Constitution, no, you could do that. You could do that. No, I believe in the rule of law. I believe in the rule of law. And our Constitution constraints just to taking back. Right? Yeah, well, that's what they say. But again, I am a creature. I'm a creature of the rule of law. And so I say many families throughout the archipelago fell victim to that very act called the Qualities of Titles Act. And in fact, I was, as a little boy, we farm out there. In Old Bite Day, it was like close to 5,000 acres. Eventually, after much, in fact, because of the intervention of the member from Anglerson's father, Ansel Linden, all right, we were able to save the settlement, but they still kept all that land. I remember when the land that in question was sold for about $30 million by the Christie family. They're the ones who had acquired it. Huh? They sold it. I brought.
That's his family.
That's his family. That's his family.
They ain't give him nothing.
No, he ain't getting nothing.
That's the lighter side of it.
Yeah, because he was in here. It just so happened that one of the three ladies who had been sentenced to Foxhill Prison for contempt of court. Right? Yeah. One of three of the women who was sentenced to prison for contempt of court. I brought her here. Her name was Adeline Ambrister. She was 88, thereabouts, around that time. I brought her here to speak to the travesty and tragedy of what was happening then. And I asked her, well, look, just build her a home from the proceeds, because she was living in quarters that was not becoming of her. I said, just build a house. It ain't gonna cost more than $80,000, because she was, but no. I think somebody gave somebody $1,000, say, for the regatta that year. So we spoke to that, and that was some of the tragedy. Now, they were sent, three ladies, Benita Roll, Jeanette Roll, and Adeline Ambrister. When the quieting of titles, when that property was being quieted in the Supreme Court. Now look, we're talking about, we're talking about a time when the representative, we call it the representative for Cat Island, H.G. Christie, they were quieting the property. They heard about it. They come down to Nassau, and they go in that building over there they call the Supreme Court building. When they walk in, all they see is this white man sitting up on the, on the throne, wearing red and a wig. And everybody in there, and the lawyers. Now my people, we speak broken English. And while I'm on the subject of broken English, we ought not to be ashamed that we speak broken English. That's us. And the reason why, the reason why we were browbeaten into accepting the fact that we spoke broken English was because they wanted us to forget who we are and speak English.
Yes.
Right? Don't forget that, right? Broken English, right? So now they go in this court. Yeah, they will go in this court now, right?
That's why we come in soon directly.
Yeah, they go in court. They see this. They can't understand the Englishman who's speaking to them. They could hardly understand the lawyer who's speaking to them. And they talking about, how come you own this land? And we try to break it down. Well, that's my land. My grandpa left me here working the land.
For hundreds of years.
My ma and pa working the land. And I am now 40 years of age, and I've been working it from as a baby.
Yes.
And I can say, too, the same land, when I was a little boy, my grandma and grandpa used to take me on that land, too, because they had been working the land all those times.
They just didn't see H.C. Christie.
Right. But look what happened.
Busy farming.
Look what happened, right? They were in strange surroundings. They look around, they nervous. They know, they know nothing about this. And guess what happened, right? And of course, they saw their representative in there because he was the petitioner.
Yeah.
Oh, that's him, yeah. And the court ruled against them and granted the land to H.C. Christie, right? Yeah, a couple of people signed documents saying that they don't know what they're doing. And if you look at most of the documents that signed, what they are, the X, his mark, X, her mark.
Dispossession.
Right, now they left, so they left the court, they went back home, and they
Can't
continued.
wait till Glenn.
They continue to work the land.
We hear about
They went back home and they continued, they work in the land. And then next thing you know, this one thing, that's why I love my Bahamian women, particularly them Cat Island women. They don't back down. They're extraordinary and resilient people.
Yes.
Right? The word come, well, the police come and they lock you all up for being on the land.
on their land.
On their land. You say, well, they come and lock me up for? I say, yeah, because the court said the land ain't belong to you all.
I know.
Guess what they hear that? All the men ran out of the field. They gone back home. These three ladies say, yeah, this my land, I ain't getting over here. I must say, my grandpa was in that too. He left and he left. He left because of that. And all those because of that, he left them. They said, well, let's go. Let's maybe deal with this some other house. They said, deal with this. I ain't leaving my land. I ain't leaving my crop.
Yes.
For them to come, because they say they come to thief my crop, they ain't come to lock me up. And they stayed. And they came to court. They said they were in contempt of court because they refused to leave the land alone. And they went for 21 days. Now, by the time that came to the attention of brave souls like A.D. Hanna and Walsh Whitfield wasn't quite a lawyer at the time. He was still studying. And Sir Lyndon Pilling at the time. We didn't have a court of appeal. Any decision of the Supreme Court at that time, in those years, 62, 63, you had to go directly to the Privy Council. That's in England. Now, my cousin could find, they're farmers. They're subsistence farmers. They lived off the land.
Yeah.
Right? What they grow, they eat. They even had no grocery store in the settlement. They relied on the boat to bring the box. Where are we going to find money to, right? But thank God to the efforts of Sir Lyndon and A.D. Hanna, they were able to contact solicitors in London and gave them the background, and they went, and you'll find this in the archives of the Privy Council to this day. They went to court, and they looked at it. They said, I am going to grant leave to hear this case, because on the face of what we're saying, an egregious miscarriage of justice has happened. And that the leave was granted. Now, when the process is, if you go to the Privy Council and you get leave to appeal, then the order comes back for the record of the trial to be prepared and then sent back to England, to court. Now, when they came back for the record, files missing. To this day, we can't find those files.
Travesty of justice.
That's what happened in those days. To this day, you can't find the files. All right? And so it was in 1972, and the records here in the House will demonstrate that the then Member of Parliament, Oscar Johnson, he moved the resolution to vacate the conviction, because contempt is a conviction, to remove that conviction and to compensate the three ladies. And of course, there's some other things that didn't happen, which at some point in time before I retire from this place, I hope to have that done.
Yeah, this is the
But I'm just saying,
that's the names of the three ladies.
yeah, Benita, yeah, Adeline, I say Janetta, yeah.
Yeah, and then the
Yeah,
first,
it's Adeline and Bristol, Virginia Roll and Janetta Roll.
that's right.
That's them. That's them. I knew all of them. As I said, Adeline was the last to pass, and she came and sat right. I brought her up here because she needed a lot of help to get up. And the thing about it, she's looking at the Prime Minister then, Hubert Ingram. And she said, but you know, Mr. Ingram used to be the chairman of the PLP party, you know. Adeline and Bristol used to be a stalwart counselor, you know, for the PLP. And in fact, we did a little work for her, you know. And so when she said, well, that's Hubert Day. I said, yeah. He said, Hubert can look out for me. I said, yeah, well, come. Let's go, let's talk with him. Right? But of course, she didn't realize that by this time she was PLP, but she didn't know that Inga was no longer PLP, even though he was Prime Minister. And nothing happened. So those are some of the things that the step we take today, hoping to be cleared up and cleaned up. And so I rise, as I do this morning, on behalf of the people of Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador, on behalf of every Bahamian, every Bahamian who has wondered if land reform would be realized within their lifetime. You know, like I said, we grew up in Cat Island. I gave you some of the history, where land represents heritage and financial stability, where a plot of land could feed a family for generations and be passed down across centuries. The story of our land is a critical part of our personal histories. Talk about some of it. There are instances where land has been passed down from the Emancipation era. These are generational properties that our ancestors literally toiled and bled for. Considering this legacy, it is alarming to think that we have a system that fails to adequately protect the inheritance of our people. We currently have a system rife with loopholes that allows land as the main building block of generational wealth to slip away from the grasp of everyday Bahamians. This is unjust and unacceptable. Hence, one of the first things we did when we elected was to form this committee to look at our land law, to make recommendations for the purposes of correcting the ills that I've pointed out, some of which I've pointed out. And so I was happy that, first of all, that Ms. Charlene Smith accepted to be a distinguished lawyer whose practice is in land law, who appreciates and understands the nuances of title ownership, to chair that committee. And I think the co-chair was Mr. South and Central Andres, Honorable Lundy. And I thank Mrs. Smith for her. She is in the audience, and I think several of the committee members are here as well. And give our heartfelt thanks for what you have done for us, to bring us where we are. And so, Madam Speaker, we are at the start of a new budget cycle. Having just debated and passed a budget focused on expanding opportunities for all Bahamians, I cannot think of a more fitting topic to debate today in this session since the budget debate than the land reforms before us, which will expand opportunities for more Bahamians to be landowners by helping them to gain clarity and assurance on their inheritance. Yes. This is what this administration is all about, Madam Speaker. We are committed to expanding opportunities for Bahamian ownership. We want to empower more Bahamian business owners, so we are providing widespread support for small and medium-sized enterprises. We want to create more Bahamian homeowners, and our affordable homes and rent-own initiatives have that covered. We want more Bahamians to be able to afford to own things in their country. That's why we are maximizing employment opportunities, securing high-quality jobs for Bahamians that are currently held by non-Bahamians, and investing heavily in education through BTVI and the university and UB, through our public school reforms, and through the new digital upskill programs. We are tackling this issue from all sides. Naturally, land reform represents the next frontier for reforms that our country desperately needs as we rid ourselves of the broken systems of the past that have held our people back. We want Bahamians to not just own a piece of the pie. We want Bahamians to own a majority of the pie in the Bahamas. This is the land of our birth, and we should all feel empowered to be owners in this country. And we shouldn't have to be rich or well-connected for ownership to be a reality. This is the future we have been fighting for from day one. Land reform must be a part of this fight. Our people deserve nothing less than a system that supports their dreams. Unfortunately, a significant portion of land throughout our archipelago lacks a clear title. There are numerous cases where generational property has been passed down with conflicting claims or without official records. There are too many cases in our courts where each claimant claims to have valid but conflicting documentation. Sometimes multiple people claim the same piece of land, and each party truly believes the land is theirs. Each party believes that the land is truly theirs. Today, with the Registered Land Bill 2025 and the Land Adjudication Bill 2025, we are taking meaningful steps, fixing what's broken with the way we register land and handle land disputes in our nation. Madam Speaker, for too many years, this outdated system has impeded progress. Parents attempt to pass on property to their children, only to be told that they don't own the land that they thought they owned. Family members get together to start a business, only to spend years fighting other groups over the ownership of the land in courts. What should have been a move toward financial empowerment for that family becomes a financial burden as expensive legal fees become a barrier to justice. Oftentimes, the wealthier parties, Madam Speaker, in these cases, win through a war of attrition, as the financial toll of a land dispute becomes too costly, and families have no choice but to give up on fighting for their inheritance. It's not by chance that things tend to play out this way. The wealthy and the learned often exploit the loopholes, weaknesses, and chaos in our land laws and systems for their own gain. It is a classic case of the rich getting richer as the poor gets poorer. Meanwhile, many Bahamians are left unable to sell lease, or mortgage their land. Businesses see opportunities, but won't build on questionable titles. Investors want to develop areas, but are wary of the questionable land records. There have been countless Bahamians who lost their birthright due to the broken system. This state of affairs was inexcusable decades ago when Bahamians first began clamoring for change. But for these same issues to still exist in 2025, I say shameful. Fortunately, those days are now coming to an end. Madam Speaker, we have consulted widely. As I said, the committee, led by Mrs. Smith, Charlotte Smith, and the member for South and Central, Andros, they consulted very widely with virtually every major stakeholder throughout a lengthy consultation period to ensure that we get this reform right. And I believe we have succeeded. Thanks to the bills before us today, we will have land adjudicators officially clarifying ownership rights once and for all. We will establish land tribunals that hear and render fair decisions in land disputes, eliminating the need for expensive and lengthy court proceedings. We will bring clarity to the regulation of land, creating one official, indisputable record. We will modernize how land rights are recorded, moving from what is called a deeds-based system to a modern title-based system, making it easier to sell, inherit, mortgage, and develop land. And we will give investors confidence that there are no hidden claims on the land that will serve as the foundation for their investments. The Land Adjudication Bill allows the minister responsible to declare adjudication areas for the purposes of officially settling any disputes related to land ownership in that area. After an adjudication area is designated, a land adjudicator, who will be a senior lawyer with a minimum of 10 years of experience in land law, arrives with a team of local assessors, demarcators, surveyors, and records officers to delineate boundaries, survey the area, and develop a comprehensive understanding of the history of ownership in the area, including all parties who claim to have a right to land ownership. All involved parties are then required to file a claim with their evidence to support that claim. As a part of this process, the rights of those who are overseas, missing, not yet of age, or otherwise deemed unfit to participate will be safeguarded. Additionally, any ongoing court cases in respect to that land being adjudicated would be stayed to prevent potential conflict with the adjudication process. All land disputes are heard by a land tribunal comprised of the adjudicator and 2 local assessors who will make a decision based on the facts at hand. These adjudicators are guided by the principles of fairness and justice, and as I might say, based on the rule of law. In instances where an individual or group has treated the land as their own, for example, they may have been paying taxes and maintaining it. In most cases, if they have possessed that land for 12 years, they'll become the owners of the land. If it is crown land upon which they might have been occupying, the period required for ownership is 30 years. And for beachfront or foreshore property, the period increases to 60 years. At the end of all the reviewing of the records, surveying and demarcating, hearing disputes, and determining ownership rights, an adjudication record will be created outlining the owners of the land, the exact specifications of the land they own, what rights they have, and the type of title they have, whether it is absolute or provisional. and whether there are any easements or other rights affecting the land. Once this process is finalized, it will stand as the official record, clarifying all ownership rights within the adjudication area. Anyone who disagrees with the decision is free to make their objection known and notify the the adjudicator of their intent to appeal that decision or the adjudicator's decision in the Supreme Court. So the adjudication process does not in any way take away a person's ability to have the courts rule on the issue. It is a process designed to provide a fair decision for all involved parties based on the evidence as a cost-effective and more efficient alternative to going to court so that anyone with an ownership right has access to justice. We are putting an end to the system in which the wealthy choose to take lower-income opponents to court, knowing they don't have the funds for a prolonged battle. Instead, fair and equitable outcomes are now within reach for everyone. Madam Speaker, the other bill is the Registered Land Bill that will finally modernize the legal framework for the registration of land and title. This law establishes a new land registry where records will be organized and held securely. There'll be no more files getting lost and no more confusion and chaos. Once again, many Bahamians have complained about falling victim to the systemic chaos when files conveniently go missing at the most opportune time for their opponents in a land dispute. This has been allowed to happen for far too long, but those days are finally over. This land registry will be overseen by a registrar of lands who will be a seasoned legal expert with a decade or more of experience, supported by staff dedicated to ensuring the proper registration of land. The two bills before us are complementary in that the adjudication process clearly identifies and officially declares the owners. And this bill, that is the registration bill, will ensure that a permanent record of that proceedings are stored and secured. After the adjudication process, as noted, the land is registered at the land registry with a unique identification number, and any and all owners are reflected in the official records. When a sale or transfer occurs, this record is able to be updated swiftly, and the same goes for any mortgages. This comprehensive bill also outlines the process for the registration and protection of leases, as well as the pre-parcellation and the division of land for subdivisions and estates. Legal clarity is given on the transfer of land by death and bankruptcy, and numerous ways to protect interests in land are outlined, including inhibitions by the courts, cautions by individuals or banks with interest in the land, or restrictions by the registrar due to fraud or any other sufficient cause. Owners are provided with land certificates indicating their ownership rights, and these certificates are likewise provided to lessees. In the interest of expanding access to information, any member of the public will also be able to search the land register themselves, provided they receive an official search certificate from the registrar. So if you want to see the official information, you can go and see it yourself. No need to go through a third party. No worries about anyone pulling the wool over your eyes. This bill, Madam Speaker, like the adjudication bill, also recognizes the gaining of land rights by long-term possession and sets out the process by which a person can successfully acquire title in this way. The process also allows for rectifications to be made by the registrar or by the courts, and in instances where, due to an error, a person is deemed to have incurred a loss, they may have a right to indemnity, to be compensated for their loss, assuming that the loss was not incurred because of fraud or negligence on their part. And of course, any person who is aggrieved by a decision made by the registrar, they are entitled to appeal the decision to the courts. These are just a few of the main elements of this expansive bill. Madam Speaker, we have developed and introduced 2 comprehensive land reform bills, instilling much-needed confidence in our land registration system for the many Bahamians who need security in knowing the official record grant them undeniable rights of ownership. At the end of this reform process, due to the clarity provided, mortgages and property sales will be processed faster. Developers can move forward with certainty instead of confusion. Parents and grandparents can confidently pass land on to their progeny without worry that it will slip away or be snatched away. And inheritance disputes can finally be resolved in a way that honors the facts, the historical records, and the rights of all parties. For the many Bahamians who have struggled for years with ongoing, seemingly never-ending land disputes, this is a big deal. These bills represent light at the end of the tunnel and a possible solution to years of headaches and heartaches. When we say that we are here to change the status quo, these are the kinds of changes we are talking about, not small, incremental changes or going after the low-hanging fruit, but addressing the long-standing problems that have plagued Bahamians for generations. This is what we have been doing throughout the past 3.5 years, not just with land reforms, but with the many of our most pressing issues. Our predecessors were afraid of cannabis reforms, but we are tackling these reforms head on. Our predecessors lacked the vision to fix BPL, but we understood the necessity of change, and we launched the largest energy reform initiative in our nation's history to lower bills and to take us to a solar-powered future with reliable power supply. We signed 56 labor agreements and rolled out a public service-wide promotional exercise and public service-wide salary increase after years of stagnancy. We built the first affordable homes in years to address the housing crisis. And we are responsible for decreasing absences in our schools. And we now have over 90% of persons attending school today and over the past 3.5 years. We are also the first government in our history as a nation to project a budgetary surplus, which is a significant improvement of the government's fiscal health. You see, Madam Speaker, we are unafraid to take on the biggest challenges. In fact, we see these challenges as opportunities. Being the first administration to truly address land reform is simply part of the wider trend of us fixing the things that desperately need to be fixed in this country. Where others see problems, we see solutions. This is just a glimpse of the new Bahamas we are building, a Bahamas where ownership of land is more accessible, a Bahamas where justice is within reach and no longer impeded by financial barriers, a Bahamas where we are committed to fixing the hardest, most complex problems because it is the right thing to do. This is a moral imperative. The longer we delay taking action, the more people were harmed by a broken system. And the truth is, there's no other party willing to fix this problem but us. Too many of those in powerful positions benefit from the broken system to ever have a true desire to fix it. The first white paper on land reform was produced in the 1960s. That's 6 decades of inaction. The first draft bills for land reform were produced in 2010. Yet, it is only now, in 2025, that real change has arrived through the efforts of this administration. Our predecessors, Madam Speaker, our predecessors made their choice. They chose inaction. They choose to leave a broken and oppressive system in place. We are choosing progress. We are choosing respect for the Bahamian people and their wishes. We are demonstrating our belief in the inherent and universal dignity that all Bahamians should have access to. And most importantly, we are building a country that supports the dreams of the Bahamian people. In the Bahamas, Madam Speaker, we are building. You won't have to be in the inner circle to feel included. You won't have to have the right last name or the right amount of money in your bank account to be treated with respect and be supported in pursuit of your goals. Every Bahamian deserves access to opportunity, and we will continue fighting to expand opportunity until our vision is made real. The Registered Land Bill 2025 and the Land Adjudication Bill 2025 represent just 2 of the changes we are actively rolling out. I want to thank the Attorney General and his office, as well as the Land Reform Committee, which was co-chaired, as I mentioned earlier, by the member from Mangrove Key and South Andrews and Ms. Sharon Wilson Smith, for their hard work in driving the development and the drafting of these land bills. I know the process has been long and arduous. However, this group, comprised of some of the top legal and public sector minds, got the job done. These efforts paved the way toward the bills before us today. I also thank the many stakeholders who participated in the consultation process, providing their feedback and ensuring that we addressed the issues plaguing our land registration process. Most importantly, Madam Speaker, I thank the Bahamian people for continuing to lend their support to this administration as we build a better Bahamas for everyone. We agree, Madam Speaker, as we admonished, there's much land yet to be possessed. We have possessed some land that we ought to acknowledge as well. And we continue to, we did a lot, but there's still a lot more to be done. And we are up to the task to completing the work. I want to thank you, Madam Speaker, and may God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Exumas and Ragged Island.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. I rise on behalf of the people of Exumas and Ragged Island. And at the outset, Madam Speaker, I want to commend the member for Cat Island, Rumpke, San Salvador, who has led this initiative. And he has done what no one has done before.
That's right.
And I don't hope to offer any more legal clarity than the KC member for Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador has already done, whose decades of legal experience are beyond question and has served him well in clearly laying out the legal implications of these landmark bills. But I would rather speak to some of the real-world implications and the transformative impact these bills will have on investments, on wealth creation, on home ownership, on economic empowerment for Bahamians, and the improvement of overall quality of life of our people and our country at large. This is truly historic and transformative. So as I second the Land Adjudication Bill 2025 and the Registered Land Bill 2025, we find ourselves debating the question also of national development itself. And these bills represent the most substantive reform in land administration in over a century in the Bahamas. This is a win for the Bahamian people. And we are revolutionizing just like we promised we would do in our blueprint for change. Before getting into the debate itself, Madam Speaker, I would like to also celebrate another win for the Bahamian people brought about by this administration, the grand opening of Celebration Key on Grand Bahama. I visited again this past weekend, and it truly is a beauty to behold. The first ship is expected to arrive this weekend with 4,500 guests. And the week after, there will be 2 ships with 9,500 guests per day. And when the additional pair is completed, it will accommodate up to 18,000 guests per day. That's 1 million for the rest of the year. That's 2 million next year. That's 4 million in 2027, and 5 million in 2028. We are revolutionizing, Madam Speaker, just like we promised we would do in our blueprint for change. I congratulate Carnival. I'm happy for the people of Grand Bahama. This is a $700 million investment with 500 Bahamians employed, 75 new direct retail businesses, and there have been more than 29 Bahamian construction firms involved. There will be a myriad of offshoot opportunities in food and beverage and housing and transportation and tours and experiences, a win for the Bahamian people. I commend Prime Minister Davis for his leadership and also the hard work and determination of the Honourable Member for Pine Ridge and the Minister for Grand Bahama, whose leadership has nudged this development across the finish line. And I would like the record to show that it was the Christie-Davis administration that brokered and signed this transformative deal in 2017. And I note that there are some who attempt to rewrite history and to claim credit. But when the Christie administration left office in 2017, he turned it over to the other side, who had 4 years to complete the deal. They only moved it into the port area, but they left it in disarray. They couldn't take it across the finish line, Madam Speaker. They couldn't get the job done. But we finished the deal, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for East Grand Bahama.
While I share in Exoma's celebration for the Bahamian people and for the people of Grand Bahama, we have to also make sure that the record is accurate. There was a heads of agreement that was put in place by Mr. Christie. That heads of agreement did not proceed. They applied for, Carnival applied for permission. They applied for permission to proceed with this development. We approved this development. We negotiated this heads of agreement. We signed this heads of agreement that applied to this Celebration Key development. So let us make sure that the record is accurate. We all celebrating this, but let us make sure that the record is accurate.
He always does that.
I'm glad that the member for East Grand Bahama feels it important that he celebrate Celebration Key, first of all.
Yes. At least that's.
And second of all, I'm glad he acknowledges that it was the Christie Davis administration in 2017 that signed the heads of agreement with Carnival to build the port in Grand Bahama. And I'm glad he recognized that his administration that came to office moved the port from East Grand Bahama proper to the port area. I'm glad he acknowledges this. And I'm glad I wish he would now acknowledge that they left the job undone. And when we came to office, I was confronted with a 4-page letter from the developer of things that needed to be completed. And we finished the job, Madam Speaker.
It was incomplete when you left.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Madam Speaker, this need not be a point of contention, you know. If the member for Exuma would also acknowledge that the first heads of agreement that Mr. Christie signed did not proceed. They applied for this development. They proceeded and they signed this heads of agreement with the Free National Movement. That's a simple acknowledgement. And time ran out with respect to us proceeding. That's all.
You may proceed, honorable member.
That's all. We planted the seeds, and y'all reaped it. That's all. That's all, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I am extremely proud. I am extremely proud of the work that the Free National Movement did with bringing this development forward. I'm extremely proud. I'm extremely proud of what we did to approve it and what we did to negotiate the heads of agreement. I am extremely proud of that, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member.
The member for East Grand Bahama should just celebrate Celebration.
I leave that like that.
It happens to be in his constituency. I'm glad we were able to get it done for the people of East Grand Bahama. When we came to office, we were confronted with a 4-page letter from the developer. We got it done. It's finished. It's empowering people, and the people of Grand Bahama are better for it, Madam Speaker.
We started it. We amended
And
many things.
I once
Many
again
things, my brother.
applaud Prime Minister Christie.
Yes. We amended many things to make that happen, my brother. Many, many things. Yeah, many things.
From construction jobs
You all reap it.
to long-term employment, to entrepreneurs, supplying goods and services, to increase tourist traffic, to carnival presence, empowering Bahamians. That's what we're about. And we expect economic growth, lower unemployment, and a return to Grand Bahama for many. And they are now returning at the invitation for the Minister for Grand Bahama. And in the case, Madam Speaker, of this legislation, we're also seeking to empower Bahamians. This before us today, the Bahamian people have been waiting long enough. Not since the Quieting of Titles Act of 1959, as you have heard, has our legislative agenda sought to tackle the structural shortcomings of land ownership and registration with such heavy lifting and purpose. This legislation has not been without its challenge. That's the Quieting of Titles Act, as you've heard, and it had become under the scrutiny of the Privy Council in 2012, when they warned judges and lawyers to be vigilant to prevent its abuse by what they called land thieves. And they made reference to a speech by the Honorable Paul Adley, who had taken specific interest in this matter, and that he made reference to stealing land through this process. And he said, and I quote, the technique is very simple. You find a crooked lawyer and two unemployable drunks who swear affidavits of possession of 50 or 100 acres of land. You apply to the court for title, and he went on. I won't belabor the point, except to say that these landmark reforms today is going to help us to bring transformation. And I would dare say, as Fort Charlotte might say, we're taking steps towards land justice, Madam Speaker. Today, the work continues. This will not be an overnight fix, but it's a step in the right direction. Yes. As we revolutionize, just as we promised we would do in our blueprint for change. In my 10-point E-Vision 2030 plan for Exuma, I highlighted land reform as the ninth pillar, foreshadowing what we see here today. And I am grateful for the work that's been put in by the professionals. And as chair of the Chamber of Commerce in November 2012, I had a lot to say on these issues. For generations, not just years, for decades, Bahamians have lived under a land tenure system that is outdated, uncertain, and unjust. Properties have remained in limbo due to unclear titles. Families have been paralyzed and in more than a few instances torn apart by generation property disputes. Investors have tiptoed around opportunities for fear of legal entanglements. Developers have backed away, unable to secure financing because land they wish to develop could not be mortgaged. And even the state, which has stewardship of 70% of land in the country as Crown land, has struggled to administrate it effectively due to bureaucratic gridlocks and archaic processes. In fact, it simply takes too long, for far too long, to transfer land ownership in the Bahamas. And in 2010, there had been the Land Use Policy Project that pointed out 70% Crown land, which means 30% privately held. But they pointed out that 15% of that land was in dispute. And what that tells me as a layman is that more than 50% of privately owned land in the country they considered to be in dispute. That's significant, very much so, Madam Speaker. And these measures are seeking to address these issues. The private sector, particularly the real estate and development industries, have for years highlighted these challenges. And when I was president, as I mentioned, of the chamber, I said some unkind things about lawyers, Madam Speaker. What I said then was that lawyers kill business deals by dragging out conveyances and clinging to a deed-based system that was never designed to meet modern economic needs. I wasn't very politically correct back then, Madam Speaker. I foreshadowed that I would lose a few lawyer friends that day.
Speak the truth.
And I was okay with that. I said it takes too bloody long. It slows property, economic growth, and economic development.
Yes.
And lawyers, by and large, are keeping a stranglehold on this sector by not implementing acceptable service standards or advancing needed reforms, present company excluded, Madam Speaker. And I said then, as I say again today, we need to fix the system. Yes. And I am delighted almost 13 years later, I am now on the other side as a part of the solution. But I applaud lawyers today, the members of the Land Reform Committee, the Attorney General, Law Reform, the Prime Minister himself, and many of my colleagues who are attorneys, burned midnight oil, making sure that these bills are fit for purpose, and we are thankful. And the Prime Minister himself, as we all know, as one of the most distinguished KCs in the country, led with courage, and he asked that we make this a priority in this administration.
Yes, yes.
And here we are today, delivering because of the work of those attorneys who realized the flaws in the system and worked with us to get this right through the consultation and drafting processes. I don't take back what I said back then, but we consider forgiveness, Madam Speaker, because there is no doubt in my mind that we have made significant steps today with the support and with the consultation of many of those same lawyers who did not see it fit then to advance these issues, but see it fit now to stand at the forefront of this progress we are seeing today. These reforms have been long in the making. In 2005, with assistance from the IDB, the Bahamas launched the Land Use Policy and Administration Project. That $5 million project delivered critical insights. Among them, over 15% of land parcels were in dispute, as I referenced. Property was locking families out of wealth creation. Communist land remained unregistered and largely unusable, and our deeds-based system lacked the reliability, transparency, and the speed that investment demands. Generation property has long been a source of frustration and heartbreak. All across these islands in my constituency too, land acquired by great-grandparents but never formally conveyed becomes the inheritance of dozens, even hundreds of descendants, with no formal title, no probate, and that land is effectively locked. It cannot be sold, developed, or leveraged. It sits idle, and you cannot borrow against it, whilst families grow and needs intensify. Today, we begin to unlock it, Madam Speaker, and the adjudication and registration process will allow these families to finally determine ownership with legal certainty. No longer will families have to spend thousands on legal fees just to straighten out a matter that government reform can resolve through public processes. And I want the Bahamian people to understand that this is not just about reform, this is about empowering the Bahamian people. This is about the government confirming ownership that already exists. We are replacing confusion with clarity. The same can be said for commonage land, though not covered under these bills today. Adjudication will clarify what land is held in common. And that is a critical first step towards any future reform. And for now, commonage arrangements will remain in place. But the transparency introduced here will lay the groundwork for future decisions by the communities and stakeholders involved. In my own constituency and in other islands like Eleuthera, we have large amounts of commonages in Roll Town and Rollville and Steventon and Ramsey and Mount Thompson and elsewhere. And it is my considered view that their best approach may be banding together to form a credit union of its members, to provide funding to members and help to empower commoners in developing these lands. And it is my commitment in the years ahead to provide guidance and technical support in this venture, Madam Speaker. We must continue the progress. And these bills before us today represent progress and the progression of solutions. They move us from a paper-based, lawyer-controlled, deed-reliant quagmire to a clear, adjudicated, digitized, and equitable title system. And by updating our laws, they open the door to opportunity. And the Land Adjudication Bill 2025, as you've heard, introduces a process that brings the government directly into communities to clarify who owns what. And you've heard the member for Cat Island talk about this process. But I would only say that it will not be a secretive process. It will be transparent, and it will be inclusive. And there will be a broad education countrywide so that Bahamians can understand this process and what it means to them. Notices will go out in newspaper, on websites, and billboards, and social media and radio. Bahamians living abroad will be able to submit claims. Communities will be informed and engaged. And every parcel will be surveyed. Every voice will be heard. Claims will be evaluated with fairness. And disputes will be resolved by an adjudication tribunal with local knowledge and legal expertise. This will not be an overnight process, Madam Speaker. and clearly a mammoth task. But we're up to the task, Madam Speaker. The fog of land certainty will be lifted. No more overlapping claims, no more families blocked from borrowing against inherited land, no more potential investors sidelined by unclear land rights, no more developers forced to wait months, even years, for certainty that should be available in days. And now it will be available in days. Instead, we will have a trusted, publicly searchable registry. Transactions will be faster, inheritance will be simpler, mortgages will be easier to secure. Bahamian families will be empowered to turn what once was a legal liability and a big family fight into a financial asset. This is about justice. This is also about unlocking economic growth. And in that now infamous Exuma Business Outlook speech in 2012, I said then that my ability to leverage the value of real estate as a regular Bahamian from Forbes Hill, Little Exuma, during the early 2000 boom in the period of the Exuma Four Seasons era, was critical to my journey as a business owner in acquiring a large business. And that is not a boast, Madam Speaker. That is a lived example of what is possible when land becomes more than an emotional inheritance and it takes on economic value. It appreciates and it provides wealth creation for average Bahamians. That opportunity should not be the exception, but it should and can be the rule. And with these reforms, we are saying to every Bahamian family that you can build wealth, you can develop land, you can access credit, you can be a part of the ownership of our economy. And we are empowering Bahamians and we are revolutionizing, Madam Speaker, just like we say we would do in our blueprint for change. And we're also saying to investors that the Bahamas is open for business, efficient business, with a system you can rely upon. And no longer will we lose out on opportunities. No longer will deals fall through at the last minute because of disputes. This reform will formally help to bring down the cost of acquiring land in New Providence and Family Islands. Families will be able to subdivide, sell, or develop land with far few hurdles. That means population and business growth can extend beyond Nassau and Grand Bahama as Nassauvians and Grand Bahamians return to their ancestral homes, to build second homes perhaps. And that means local economies can flourish. That means business and investment can be done quickly. And we're not alone in this process. We're not exactly charting new ground here, but we're learning from those who have gone ahead, like Jamaica and Cayman and Turks and Caicos. We're learning from the bugs that they have found. And they've implemented similar reforms, and we anticipate that we will be able to do so faster and go farther. We have learned from their experiences, we're applying best practices, and we're adapting them to our unique context. Madam Speaker, last week, we celebrated our 52nd anniversary of independence. And what we have done in the last 50 years has been truly remarkable. What we have achieved since majority rule has been a wonder. We still have ways to go. We still have land to possess, Pastor. But we have much more work to do. But I am truly proud of our progress as a people. However, the reality is that the Bahamas was a colonial territory for hundreds of years. And with that history, we carry the compounded complexities of the land we today call the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. This is the same land that the indigenous people inhabited. This is the same land that Columbus stumbled upon, then pillaged and abandoned. This was the land of the Luther adventures and many others hundreds of years ago. This was the land the Loyalists settled on. This was the land that slaves toiled and died on. The land of Pompey. The land of poor black Kate.
Yes.
the land of the suffragettes, the land of the labor movement, the land of majority rule, Madam Speaker. And I'm thankful that the National Honors Committee is seeking to honor Pompey. Yes. Pompey was an extraordinary exhumian. And the part of the story I like the most is that there was this uprising when they determined that they were going to move the slaves to Cat Island. And Pompey said, we're not leaving Exuma, no way, not today. And that's how the story started, Madam Speaker. I've told Cat Island Rumkey, San Salvador, this story a few times as well, Madam Speaker. But this was land. This was land raped and ravished and acquired by the wealth of the connected and the privileged in a pre-independence era. This is the land that we declared our birthright, independently ours, and we swore to protect. This same land, this land soaked with blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors from so many different backgrounds, is what we seek to ensure can benefit our people now, today, and many generations to come. There was intention in previous administrations and previous generations across party lines to move this issue of land reform through to the point of resolution and legal certainty. However, for whatever reasons, that was not done. We are getting it done, Madam Speaker, and we are finishing the job. Today, we are rectifying the situation and setting another milestone along our continued path of independence to ensure that the land rightfully belongs to the people it should. And for far too long, the truth has been obscured by systems that favored the wealthy, the connected, and the litigious. Those who could afford expensive and creative attorneys often prevailed, regardless of the facts. But the status quo is no longer acceptable. We are choosing action. We are choosing fairness. We are choosing progress, Madam Speaker. And the people who have progressed these issues ought to again be commended. The member for South Central Mangrove Key, Andros, the Honorable Leon Lundy, and Mrs. Charlotte Smith, and all of the members of the committee, the Office of the AG, Law Reform Commission, and every stakeholder who contributed to the drafting of these landmark bills, every lawyer and every member of the public who lent their voices to this work. We commend them again, Madam Speaker. Let me also thank the members of this House who have advocated for land reform in their communities and brought stories from their constituents to the forefront. And I urge my colleagues in this place to engage in this process moving forward, no matter what side of the aisle you sit on. And I thank the Bahamian people for their patience, for believing that one day justice would prevail. That day starts now, Madam Speaker. It is a new day in land reform, Madam Speaker. We will finally have one definitive system, a system that says this land is my land. This land is your land. This land was made for you and me. And I got the receipts to show. We will not solve every land issue overnight, but we will break the back of the broken system that was denying too many for too long. And from this foundation, further reform can and must follow. Better Crown land administration, commonage management, zoning for sustainable development. These are all real issues that will become possible to confront with confidence once we get ownership and registration right. And this administration is opening the door for there to be more Bahamian people who are empowered themselves through land acquisition. Younger generations of Bahamians. Younger generations of Bahamians using land to build something lasting. Entrepreneurs who can take advantage of opportunities because they no longer have to navigate unnecessary obstacles. families who can finally stop fighting over what Ma and Pa left behind, investors who believe that their capital is safe, and a country that can move forward together. And we are implementing these land reforms, not romanticizing about them. We're delivering justice, not just theorizing about it. And we are not waiting for another generation to do what we know we must do today. We're doing it now. And Madam Speaker, we promised to do so. We promised to recover, rebuild, and revolutionize, and we are revolutionizing today, just like we say we would do in our blueprint for change. We didn't just start revolutionizing. We revolutionized with the DARE Act, the Cannabis Act, the Tourism Development Fund, the Intellectual Properties Act, the Longevity and Regenerative Medicine Act, and the Mental Health Act, just to name a few. We've done great work. We got more to do, more land to possess, but we're revolutionizing just like we promised we would do, Madam Speaker. Before I close, I want to thank you, Madam Speaker, and your deputy, and the staff of this honorable assembly for the work you do, the long hours you put in before, during, and after the debates are done, to ensure this work gets done, and to ensure that we continue to pass progressive legislation. I expect that this will be one of those long nights, Madam Speaker, and I thank you and your team. I support these bills. I take great pride in seconding the Registered Land Bill 2025 and the Land Adjudication Bill 2025. I am happy for the Bahamian people. Bahamians from East Grand Bahama and Central too, from Forbes Hill, Little Exuma, Ramsey, and Mount Thompson, from Bimini and Berry Islands, and even St. Anne's, has an opportunity now for land justice, Madam Speaker. I am so proud of the work that we have done. I am proud of the leadership on this issue by our Prime Minister, the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador. And I am extremely thankful to everyone who is engaged, who has participated, who has delivered, and who has helped us to deliver our commitment to revolutionize, just like we promised we would do in our blueprint for change. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to make provision for the registration of titles to land and for dealings in land so registered and for purposes connected therewith. Asmini? The chair recognizes the honorable member for St. Anne's.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm wondering if the public has taken today's mover and seconder's presentations the same way I have. I'm wondering if they know enough to believe they've been misled by some of what has been said, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, these two bills are touted to be bills that will reform the land registered system in our country. These are the land adjudication bills and the registered land bill. Now, Madam Speaker, these bills were originally tabled in 2024. There was great media coverage. We were supposed to pass these in either October or November of 2024. They were then tabled again with these bills that we're debating today under the date 2025. And no lie, Madam Speaker, this morning, after months now, after more than a week prior to independence, through our independence celebrations until arriving in the House of Assembly today, did we receive amendments to these two very important land reform bills. That's not a proper way to ensure that there's accurate debate by members of the House. That's not a proper way to ensure those members in the public that have received consultation put in hours of time reviewing the two bills have actually received the benefit of these proposed amendments for review further. But, Madam Speaker, what's important is that there is an election time coming up. So we heard all of the ills from the member for Cat Island and from Exuma about the history of land quietings in the Bahamas. The Quieting Titles Act, Madam Speaker, was introduced in 1959. And, Madam Speaker, the PLP in 1959, and the PLP government was elected in 1967 for the first time. In 1966, the Land Registration Bill was drafted for implementation in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. 67, PLP came in, 25 years of rule, never did anything to introduce the Land Registration Bill. 25 years of rule, never did anything to amend the Quieting Titles Act, which members, honorable members for Exuma certainly have described as an act that allowed people to steal other person's land. Cat Island, honorable member for Cat Island, skirted around going so far as to call it stealing and claimed, as I believe him in his claim, that he respects and honors the rule of law. It is a lot of fanfare, Madam Speaker. It is the boogeyman that continues to rear its head
The chair
when
recognizes
elections
the
come
honourable
around.
member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
I quoted the Privy Council as warning judges and lawyers to be vigilant that this land could be open for land thieves. This act may be abused by land thieves, and warned that they should be vigilant, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member.
Call no names.
Can Exuma be invited to table that Privy Council document he's referring to? If not, Madam Speaker, you also heard the names of Black Kate, honors due. You also heard the names of Pompey, honors due. But you hear from Exumians. You hear from Exumians in Exuma, where the good member represents, that will state today that renovations and necessary repairs to the historical sites of Pompeii have not been completed yet. This is the man that is approving projects for, is it Staniel Key, Samson Key? The honorable member. The honorable member for Exuma and Ragged Island, Madam Speaker, is improving major projects that will dredge marinas into ecological marine habitat spaces in the Exuma Keys, but he can't attend to the renovations and repairs of historical sites for Pompeii.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Exuma.
Normally I don't follow up nonsense, Madam Speaker, but I think it's important for the public record to understand that the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection, the agencies of government, approve all marinas in the country before they could proceed. So it's important that we put that on the record, and it's important that Sinans be more responsible in his utterances in this place, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We heard from the honourable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador say that the laws as they are now, mainly referring to the Quieting Titles Act, have allowed the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer. What is getting done in Exuma? Major projects for the rich? What is getting done in Exuma? Major projects for the rich or the restoration of historical sites of Pompeii? No rebuttal there, Madam Speaker. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Madam Speaker, tell me a prime minister and deputy prime minister duo that have ever been wealthier than the current duo in this Commonwealth now. So when we try to criticize the rich in a negative light, Madam Speaker. The good gentleman can't defend themselves to claiming that they're fishing on the rock, like his book touted. Fishing on the rock, but the picture inside the book was on a private jet. Parked in an airport, but on a private jet. That's rich life, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
Madam Speaker, this is an honorable place.
It is. It is.
And I'm really becoming ashamed of the utterances of this member. I ask you, please, the minister from Carmichael spoke candidly about these issues before. And I think this is going too far, Madam Speaker. I ask that you have a conversation with this member to ensure that he understands the rules of engagement of honorable men. And ask him, please, to comply, Madam Speaker. He is completely out of line. He has been completely out of line since coming here 4 years ago, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member.
Madam Speaker, it's a good thing that Exuma and Ragged Island doesn't reside in St. Anne's, because the good people of St. Anne's have no issue with their representative. They elected me, Madam Speaker. I'm not sure if the temporary backbencher is a resident of St. Anne's or a resident of Grand Bahama. But Madam Speaker, clearly the truth hurts. Clearly the truth hurts. And hurt feelings stand up and ask for persecution. Hurt feelings stand up and ask for persecution of honest men, Madam Speaker, and I am an honest man. Madam Speaker, we're talking about bills that are going to reform land in the Bahamas. And as I opened, I said, has the public, like I have felt that they've been misrepresented to date? Now, what I'm getting at there, Madam Speaker, is we're being told, once you get past the comments on Celebration Key, which, Madam Speaker, for the record, has no relevance to the debate topic, okay? So that precedent has already been set for this debate now by the member for Exuma Ragged Island talking about the Celebration Key project when we're talking about land reform. That's irrelevant. Technically, that's a breach of the rules. It's irrelevant, and that's what he stood up and said. He said he wasn't going to add anything basically more to the debate on the legal side. Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador already did that. And he then went on talking about millions and millions and millions and millions on a key that is irrelevant to today's debate. So misrepresentation, Madam Speaker, you're looking at these two bills, and I was looking at the land adjudication bill, okay? So they talk about the quieting titles bill. Now, if you don't know about the quieting titles bill, it was introduced in '59. It stayed in place for 25 years under our original first Prime Minister, under the Honourable Member A.D. Hanna. Never repealed, but today it's demonized for the sake of introducing these two bills as something groundbreaking. When in reality, Madam Speaker, part of the process of getting a certificate of title under these bills calls for, Madam Speaker, a process whereby you have to, as it relates to private land, by Section 21(1)(a), sub 1(a), have uninterrupted possession of a period of 12 years or more. In respect of Crown land, uninterrupted possession of 30 years or more, and foreshore, uninterrupted possession for 60 years or more. Madam Speaker, that's the timeline that exists under the Quieting Titles Act. So one way that you can prove your own title and obtain a certificate is the same way you would prove title and get a certificate under the Quieting Titles Act. Nothing new, Madam Speaker. Nothing new. They haven't even repealed any existing property legislation in the Bahamas, Madam Speaker. They've actually added to the volumes of property legislation in the Bahamas, Madam Speaker. So the first way you can go about establishing that you have title to property so that you can ultimately end up getting a certificate of title is the same process you would go through the same things you would need to prove under the Quieting Titles Act. Now, in addition to the period of time, subsection 2 of section 21 states that a person is deemed to be in possession of land if he does not acknowledge the title of any other person to that land, and by himself, his agent, tenant, or servant has open and peaceful possession of that land to the exclusion of the public. Same thing, same basic criteria that exists under the Quieting Titles Act, Madam Speaker. Those are the two components, the length of time, the actual possession, and that you've not acknowledged anyone else's title to the land. Same thing under the Quieting Titles Act is being added as one of the two prime methods under the Land Adjudication Bill for proving your title. This isn't great reform in the property title industry, Madam Speaker. And this is not something that's going to make things less expensive. You actually are going to have to come up with your life savings, likely, Madam Speaker, to hire an attorney, to defend you in a matter of adjudication. Because if you don't come up with your, have they said the government is going to pay? Have they said the government is going to pay for property owners to have attorneys? No. They've not said that. They've not said that, Madam Speaker. So if an area is declared for adjudication, Madam Speaker, and as was identified by the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador, Madam Speaker, if an area has been declared for adjudication, Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador said that somebody's home, somebody's property is likely to be their greatest investment. Okay? So my neighborhood, take for instance, my neighborhood gets declared an area of adjudication by the minister. I now have to Madam Speaker, appear before the adjudicator, present my documentation that I have either been in possession, as I spoke to already, or I now have to present the same documentation that my lawyer, when I bought the property, had to review, obtain, requisition on, and approve before he gave me or she gave me the opinion to buy that land. The adjudicator, this system now will go into a neighborhood and say, this area is under adjudication, come to us, or you won't get your certificate of ownership. So what was mine now, Madam Speaker, what was mine now when this order of adjudication comes around is not automatically mine anymore. It's now within the realm of the adjudicator, and I have to now present my case that this land belongs to me. Now, they're claiming that this is something that's not going to cost a lot of money. Most property purchases, the biggest expense if you use a realtor is the tax, is the realtor and the attorney. You're not going to need a realtor for this process. We don't really know if the certificates are going to come with a tax, but you're likely going to want to ensure that some lawyer with 10 years experience doesn't decide on your title the wrong way, and you're going to appear before that adjudicator with your lawyer who's going to charge you money. Now, Madam Speaker, they may try to tie this in and say, well, the lawyer or whomever can receive $500 as costs. That's the same thing as a magistrate's court, Madam Speaker. But when you get brought before a magistrate's court, Madam Speaker, and you don't, want to go to be found liable for the claim against you, you don't hire an attorney that you expect only to pay $500 in cost. That $500 in cost awarded by the court is all the court has jurisdiction to add to a judgment. If your lawyer charges you $2,500, you're responsible to pay that $2,000 balance on your own. Same thing is going to be here, okay? They're going to be coming into everyone's neighborhood, essentially telling them your property needs to be proven over again. I spoke about the Quieting Titles Act. where you can get a certificate by proving you've been in possession for 12 years, where you can get possession by proving that you've been in possession for 30 years, and for foreshore, where you can prove that you've been in possession for 60 years. The other way you go about proving your title in an adjudication process is producing good and documentary title. Madam Speaker, that's the exact same requirement that has to be completed in the current real property land transaction system. A good route of title, Madam Speaker, is title that can show documents going back 30 years, starting with a conveyance, ideally, starting with a mortgage, not necessarily ideally, or a certificate of title under the existing Quieting Titles Act that would have been issued, say if it's less than 30 years, or 30 years, or a Crown grant. Now, a Crown grant can be 30 years older. A Crown grant can be as recent as yesterday. But all of those documents are what an attorney looking at the title system today would need to ensure were in place. So this bill hasn't eliminated that cumbersome process. This bill hasn't eliminated that cumbersome process. It may say, well, it only has to be done one more time. It may say, well, it only has to be done one more time. But you're still going to need to have an attorney. If you don't have an attorney, Madam Speaker, and you go in with your documents before an adjudicator, and you have a senior KC, you have a senior KC. You have a senior KC. Now, the government side spoke about our imperial masters. I think it was the gentleman that's now sitting behind me when he was across the aisle. He talked about our imperial masters, right? But do you know what KC stands for, Madam Speaker? There's a number of KCs sitting on the government side. KC stands for King's Counsel. A number of these honorable men on the other side wear the designation of King's Counsel, Madam Speaker. They don't have any problem with this connotation of imperial masters. He'll have a chance to speak, Madam Speaker. It's actually against the rules for members to speak in a way to interrupt someone giving their debate. So, Madam Speaker, what we're looking at is a system under the Land Adjudication Bill that if you make your way through it and you're still able to prove that the land remains yours and you get a certificate of title, that certificate of title gets registered. But there's an appeal process from the adjudicator to the Supreme Court, and from the Supreme Court to the Court of Appeal. What's interesting, though, Madam Speaker, is when yes, they're already cutting out the Privy Council, but they're going from an adjudicator, an appeals process to the Supreme Court, and then an appeals process to the Court of Appeal. Now, Madam Speaker, what's interesting is that you may end up appearing before the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal, but while you're at the adjudicator who can make a decision, that adjudicator may, in their discretion, admit evidence which would not be admissible in a court of law. So you can have an adjudicator making a decision relying on evidence that's not admissible in a court, and then an appeal from that adjudicated decision goes before the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal. So they're going to now have to consider the decision of a lower judgment body, and it's going to be based on information that would not otherwise be admissible in the Supreme Court. So isn't it likely then that some of the evidence which is admitted in the adjudication on appeal will not even be considered in the Supreme Court, Madam Speaker? It's a little mixed up still, but I would say not to worry. Not to worry for now. The PLP gets the nameplate. They can put it on their little list of things that they got done. And obviously they're taking this seriously, Madam Speaker. Obviously they're taking this seriously because I I can't tell a lie, Madam Speaker. I did not hear the mover.
This success reflects the potential of a well-regulated land market to drive growth, reduce disputes, and empower citizens. Madam Speaker, while we take inspiration from the legislative strides made within our region in places like St. Lucia, Jamaica, and Barbados, we must also recognize the land reform is a global undertaking. Nations around the world facing similar challenges of ownership, access, and equity have turned to innovative frameworks to bring clarity to land rights and empower their citizens. From the rice fields of Indonesia to the plains of Africa and the dense urban corridors of Southeast Asia, countries have had to ask the same fundamental question we now ask ourselves. How do we ensure that land as a source of identity, security, and economic strength is fairly and transparently adjudicated? Their experiences offer valuable insights, some cautionary, others aspirational, but all instructive. Madam Speaker, following the devastation of the 2004 tsunami, Indonesia launched the reconstruction of Aceh land registration system, or RALAS. Supported by the World Bank, this effort saw over 230,000 new land titles issued, restoring stability, rebuilding communities, and empowering women with secure property rights. It was a profound reminder that land tenure security is essential, not just in times of prosperity, but in the face of crisis. Madam Speaker, organizations like the World Bank and the Food and Agriculture Organization have long championed land reform as a driver of poverty reduction and economic growth. They emphasize transparent processes, public engagement, and the use of cutting-edge technology like geographic information systems to improve land administration. These standards provide a powerful framework for our own reforms, ensuring that the Bahamas remains at the forefront of global best practices. Madam Speaker, as we move forward, it is vital that we adapt these lessons to our unique Bahamian context. Our nation is an archipelago, a constellation of islands, each with its own distinct history, culture, and land tenure traditions. In the Family Islands, where oral agreements and generational claims are common, we must develop a system that respects these traditions while providing the clarity and security of modern land records. We will harness the power of GIS and digital mapping to create precise, accessible, and secure land records. This technology will allow us to capture the full diversity of our land holdings, from bustling urban centers to the tranquil, unspoiled beauty of our out islands. Above all, our system must be transparent and inclusive. It must earn the trust of the people it serves, ensuring that no Bahamian is left behind in this journey towards secure land rights. Madam Speaker, as we consider the examples of our Caribbean neighbors and the best practices of the global community, let us be inspired to build a land governance system that reflects the strength, resilience, and potential of the Bahamian people. Let us commit ourselves to this transformative moment, laying the foundation for a future where every Bahamian can stand on their land with confidence, secure in their rights, and proud of their heritage. Madam Speaker, this is our moment. Let us seize it. Having laid out the legal and institutional framework for land reform, our task now is to move from vision to execution. It is one thing to pass legislation, but it is quite another to implement it effectively, ensuring that every Bahamian, from Inagua in the south to Grand Bahama in the north, feels the impact of transformative efforts. Madam Speaker, implementing a land reform initiative of this magnitude requires a phased approach, one that allows us to learn, adapt, and refine as we progress. This journey will begin with pilot projects on select islands, chosen their diverse land tenure challenges and strategic importance. Starting with islands like Andros, Grand Bahama, and Abaco, we will create a blueprint for the rest of the country, testing our processes, technology, and community outreach strategies. These islands will present a mix of agricultural land, family settlements, commercial zones, and sensitive environmental areas, an ideal proving ground for our new land adjudication and registration systems. From these early efforts, we will develop best practices, identify potential challenges, and build the confidence needed for a national rollout. Madam Speaker, to execute this vision, we must invest in our people. This reform is not just about new laws, but about building a new generation of land professionals. Surveyors, registrars, adjudicators, and IT specialists who understand the significance of their work and are equipped to carry it out with integrity and precision. We will establish training programs to equip these professionals with the skills needed to operate our new digital land registry and adjudication systems. This will include technical training in the use of GIS, digital mapping, and database management, legal and procedural education to ensure that our professionals understand the rights and responsibilities enshrined in this legislation, community engagement skills to empower these individuals to work with the public resolve and dispute and foster trust in the system. These investments in human capital will create a network of experts capable of sustaining our land reform efforts for generations to come. Madam Speaker, for this reform to succeed, it must have the trust and participation of the Bahamian people. We must bring this message into every community, from the bustling streets of Nassau to the quiet settlements of the Family Islands. We will launch a comprehensive public engagement campaign, a national outreach using radio, television, social media, and town hall meetings to educate the public on their rights and responsibilities. Mobile land clinics, bringing the process directly to the people, ensuring that even the most remote communities can access adjudication and registration services. Transparency and accountability, providing clear, accessible information about the process, including regular updates on progress and success stories. This is about more than paperwork. It is about restoring confidence, building trust, and empowering every Bahamian to claim their rightful place in the land of their birth. Madam Speaker, as this Davis administration take these critical first steps toward implementation, we remain committed to building a transparent, inclusive, and resilient land governance system. This is just the beginning, and with the support of this honorable House, the Bahamian people, and our dedicated professionals, we will transform our land sector and strengthen the very foundation of our nation. Now let us look ahead to the critical next steps in this historic journey. Land reform is not an event. It is a process, one that must be approached with care, consistency, and courage. And today, with these two bills, we mark the beginning of that progress and process with purpose. Some have said that these bills will only clog the system, that they will create more bureaucracy, more red tape, and more confusion. But let us be clear. The real confusion is what exists today. The real bottleneck is a system where families can live on land for generations without security, without access to financing, and without protection from disputes or displacements.
Bring it on.
Madam Speaker, the Bahamian people are not asking for more delays. They are asking for answers. They are asking for clarity. They are asking for the means to build, to borrow, to plan, and to pass something on. These bills do not complicate the process. They finally create a process. What we are putting forward is not a tangle of new rules, but a path towards fairness, order, and inclusion. A path where Bahamians from every island, every background can engage with the land system and finally receive what is long overdue, and that's recognition.
Yes.
This is not about adding layers. It's about lifting burdens. It's about empowering the single mother who has maintained her father's property but never had a title. It's about helping the young people trying to secure a land to build their first home. It's about honoring the elders who always believed the land was theirs and ensuring their children can prove it. These are the people this legislation is for, and it's with them in mind that we take this step forward, not to complicate governance, but to serve our people with greater justice and efficiency. Madam Speaker, just a few days ago, we celebrated 52 years of Bahamian independence. We raised our flag, sang our anthem, and reflected on what it means to be a sovereign people. But true sovereignty is more than symbols and ceremonies. It is the ability of a people to stand on their own land with confidence, with dignity, and with the legal recognition. It is the power to own, protect, and to build, and also to pass on. Land reform is not just about law, it is about legacy. It is about correcting injustices, modernizing our systems, and giving every Bahamian, from the keys of Exuma to the settlements of Andros, the opportunity to say, this land is mine, and I have the papers to prove it. This is work of a maturing nation, and we are not wavering in our resolve. These bills will be passed because they are necessary, because the current system is broken, outdated, and unjust. We owe it to the Bahamian people to fix it, Madam Speaker. We cannot keep deferring solutions while generations wait. We cannot allow fair reform to outweigh the urgent need for it. The time for talking about land reform has passed. The time for doing something about it is now. Madam Speaker, through these bills, this Davis administration is building something stronger, fairer, and more future-focused for every Bahamian. On behalf of the great, respectful people of Mangrove Key, Central, and South Andros, I fully support this legislation and urge all honorable members to do the same. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Asmini. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Golden Gates.
Madam Speaker, I rise to move that the House do now suspend until 3 p.m.
Thank you, Honorable Members. It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House be suspended until 3 p.m. As many are in favor, will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. The business of this House stands suspended until 3 p.m.